Hey everyone, JC here, and today we are talking about the Logitech G29 pedal set, specifically the brake pedal, and what you can do to actually make this pedal feel more realistic in your sims. Stick around and I'll give you all the details. How's it going, everyone? Like I stated in the intro, we are talking about the Logitech G29 pedal set, the brake pedal, and more specifically, how we can make this brake pedal feel more realistic in The Sims. For any of you all out there who are experienced with the Logitech brake pedal, you will know that it's fairly weak, and then all of a sudden there's this hard stop. That knee-jerking hard stop is actually due to a rubber block that's actually in the base of this brake pedal. Now, keep in mind that I've actually modded this brake pedal set a few times, so I'm just going to go over exactly how to take this pedal set apart and how to install it, and just some of the things that you need. And getting into the things that you need, you don't need a lot of tools. You'll just need an Allen key that you see here. And this one is a 5.5 millimeter Allen key. You'll need either another Allen key or Allen head bit. This one is actually a 2.5 millimeter Allen head bit, and it worked just as well. And you're going to use that to take your brake pedal faces off. A basic screwdriver with an adjustable head, particularly a Phillips head, but luckily this one pops out and I can swap it for my Allen key head there. You will either need a 10 millimeter socket or open end wrench or even a box end wrench. And if you don't have any of those, you can actually just use a pair of pliers to actually hold a lock nut that's in place on the pedal assembly. And I'll get more into that a little bit later. The other thing you'll need, of course, is an upgraded brake pedal spring, which we have here. So as I've stated before, I've actually upgraded these pedals a few times just to kind of make sure I got the best feel for me. Now, I've ordered two different brake mods. The first mod, you'll see about half of it here because the other half is already inside of the pedal set. There's a chrome stiffer spring. It's a hard foam damper that actually screws into the spring, and I'll show you that when we get to it a little bit later. And there are also these preload washers here. This one here is a 6 millimeter preload, and this one here is a 10 millimeter preload. Now, I've used two of the other two. The kit comes with two 6 millimeters and two 10 millimeters. I've used one of the 6 millimeters in my clutch, and I've used the other one in my throttle just to give it more resistance to make it feel more lifelike. So when you take this pedal set apart, you will, in the brake pedal specifically, you'll come across this spring initially. This is the original spring that comes with the Logitech G29 brake pedal set. And as we can see here, it's fairly stiff, but I can pretty much squeeze this thing all the way to its max, nearly to its max compression with just two fingers. And so imagine when you're actually stomping down on that. But like I stated before, you come across a foam block that typically comes to about halfway, maybe about a quarter of the way, somewhere between a quarter and halfway, the length of the spring. And once you hit that block, it just makes the braking experience really terrible. So this one here is the brake mod set that I've actually been using for nearly a year now in my pedal set. It is a very, very stiff spring that I've bought from a third-party website, and I'll link that in the description below, as well as a foam damper insert for the spring that I actually ordered from 3D Wrap. I'll also link that in the description below as well. Now, this particular spring set, if I try to squeeze that here, as you can see, there's very little play, and it's very stiff. And what happens is, as the spring compresses, it actually squeezes this foam insert here, which also makes the braking experience more progressively harder as you brake, which kind of simulates brake pressure or a load cell. So I'm thinking about going back to this particular spring mod, because the spring mod that I have in here right now, I thought that I would go with a lighter spring set to kind of give my knee and ankle a little bit of relief, but it's a little too light. I don't know if it's just because I have muscle memory with this particular mod now, but after swapping it and doing a few races and playing a few hours with it, I can't wait to get back to the tougher spring. So with all that being said, all the hardware being covered and everything, let's actually jump into taking this thing apart. All right, so the very first thing you want to do here is make sure that you take off these 3 brake pedal faces first and foremost, because if not, as we can see, there's not enough clearance to pull this entire base plate over the brake pedal faces. So the very first thing you want to do is take these off, and they're very easy. Each pedal plate is only held on by 2 screws here, by Allen head screws. And what I have here is my screwdriver with the actual Allen head bit. So let's just go ahead and take these off. Okay, once you have all 3 of the pedal plates off, at this point you're ready to actually flip the entire base over and take out the screws that are actually holding the main pedal plate, base plate, to the assembly of where the 3 pedals actually connect to. If you are a bit worried about which screws go where when you're putting them back, don't worry, because as you can see, these screws here are 2 different lengths. The rule of thumb is that the shorter screws actually go into the throttle and the longer screws actually go into the brake and the clutch. So you probably won't have, if you remember that, you won't have any issue when you're reinstalling the pedal plates back onto each one of the pedal assemblies. Okay, so once you're on the back side of the pedal set here, as you can see, there are quite a bit of screws and things that this can look a bit confusing, but I assure you it's very easy. So the pedal set is mainly composed of 2 main pieces. You have this main piece here, and then this piece that actually is the bigger outer shell, and they pretty much sandwich together, and these screws hold them together. So you do not have to worry about all of these screws. The main screws that you want to look out for, that you want to take out, are these 4 right here, these 4 here, then you have these 2, and you have 2 more hidden screws that I'm going to show you. They're a bit hard to get to, so let me see if I can get them in a shot. And keep in mind that I've already modded this pedal set, and I've taken these screws out, and I just did not feel the need to put them back in. But they are behind this carpet claw here, and what you'll need to do is just kind of pull it down a little bit. Try to get it in a shot. And then you'll see that there's a spot here where 1 screw goes, and then there's another spot right there where another screw goes. These screws are not completely mandatory to hold the base into place, but if you feel the need to put them back in, by all means go right ahead. I recommend having a magnetic head screwdriver in order to put those back in. I currently don't have one, so that's why those 2 particular screws are just not there. So with all that being said, I'm just going to dive in and let's take this thing apart. So now that we have all of the screws out of the base, we are going to actually flip this guy over very carefully, and I'll explain why in a moment. Now, if you don't have a magnetic head screwdriver, And these 4, maybe 6 actually screws are, you know, they typically just don't come out. But I mean, once you flip this thing over, they'll pop out. But we still want to flip this over very carefully. And there they go, as I was just talking about. Let's move those out of the way. Now, the reason you want to be careful with this guy is that this particular cord here, this connects to all of the potentiometers in each one of these brake pedals. The cord itself, all of the wires that branch out from this are all connected to this top portion of the base. So you don't want to just pull this thing apart too quickly because you will damage those wires. So I'm going to pull this off very gently and flip it over vertically. And as you can see, here are those wires I was talking about. And if you flip them over too quickly, you can definitely damage these wires quite a bit. And if you damage them, then you're going to be in a world of hurt. So just take it really slowly and just take your time with that. Okay, so the next step in the process is to actually take out these bolts here for the clutch and the brake pedal. The reason you want to take it out for the clutch is because when you're trying to take it out for the brake pedal, there's not enough clearance here, and the bolt actually hits the end of this bolt and it kind of blocks it from coming out. So you want to make sure you take this one out first before you try taking this one out. Now, I want to give you all a forewarning, especially the brake pedal, and especially in my case as well. These springs that are actually loaded inside of these here cylinders are under quite a bit of tension. And once you take this bottom portion off here, it could potentially pop out pretty violently, or the spring could pop out and potentially hurt you. So, you know, you just want to make sure that when you take these bolts out, that you're exercising caution and that you're doing it slowly and making sure that, you know, you have everything under control, so that way you don't hurt yourself or anyone else. So with that being said, the tools you're going to need for this one kind of comes back to what I was stating earlier. This is where your 5.5 millimeter Allen key comes in, and either a good pair of pliers or an open end wrench or box end wrench to actually hold the nuts on the other side here and here as you twist the Allen key head bolts here and here. Now, when you do this process, you want to, once again, be extremely careful not to damage these wires here. You can, if you want to just kind of give yourself a little bit of breathing room, you can unscrew these 2 screws here and take off this entire cable assembly and lay it off to the side. And it'll give you a little bit of wiggle room, so that way you don't have to constantly fight with this plastic base here, pulling on it. And in all actuality, that's what I'm going to do to just make it a little easier on myself. So that would be my recommendation, is to take these 2 screws out. But keep in mind that the orientation of this particular cord is meant to bend a certain way, okay, like so. You just want to keep this orientation in mind for when you're putting it back together. So just keep that in mind. All right, and with that being said, let's get into taking this thing apart. Okay, so I actually struggled a little bit getting the brake mod out. So as I said before, I've already modded my brake spring and damper here, as you can see. So let me pull that out. So when you pull this out, it's as you can see inside here, there's actually some little plastic, there's a little design here. And this is where you would actually place your brake mod set. You see there, actually it lines up. You just want to, when you put it in, you want to line it up properly, fit it in there, and then place it back in there. Or this is where you can put in some of your preload washers to actually aid in giving you a little bit more resistance. So as we can see here, I've actually swapped the spring that's in the throttle and the clutch. This is the original spring that's in the throttle. As you can see, it's very, very soft, very springy. It's almost like nothing. So I did, the original clutch spring is actually more stiff, so I wanted to put that in the throttle since I'll be using that more. But yeah, so here is the other 6mm preload washer that I spoke about before. And same thing, as we can see here, there's this plastic design and it just fits right in. And then right there, you will put your spring right on top of it. And it, when you actually reassemble all of this, it gives it a pretty, it pre-tensions the spring just enough to that particular level to kind of give you more of a more resistance. So what I'm actually going to do is, this spring is too flimsy for me. So I'm actually going to put the original brake pedal spring in my clutch, because I actually do quite a bit of heel toe racing in a Assetto Corsa. And I like to have a little bit more resistance in my clutch. So I'm going to put that original spring, this spring here, in my clutch, and with a little bit of a preload, just to give it just that little bit of added resistance to make it just feel just a bit more realistic. But I'm just going to put that to the side for now. But more specifically, we're more worried about the brake pedal. So you do the same thing, and I come back to this particular mod here, the 3D Wrap Formula damper set here, with the third-party spring that I actually bought, that's like extremely tough to bend. So I actually may have some issues getting this thing in here. Depending on the mod set that you get, it may require 2 people to actually fit this thing back into the brake pedal. Don't feel bad if it does. These springs are very, very stiff, and it requires quite a bit of strength, and it's a little hard to work with in here. You're literally trying to compress this thing with just 2 fingers as you're trying to fit the bolts back in here. So the disassembly part is the easy part. Putting this back together with your added brake mod is the hard part. But with that being said, let's dive back into this and put all this back together. Okay, so I've actually wrestled quite a bit with this thing, and I had some technical difficulties and my camera didn't catch everything that was needed to be caught. But anyway, I'll just kind of walk through it. So putting this back together here, this one in particular was a pain. It took me at least about 10 minutes just to try to compress the spring with the damper on here enough to squeeze this bolt back in here. So what you can do if you don't have an extra pair of hands, get something that will give you a little bit of leverage. If you can just squeeze it just enough to get just the head of the bolt in, or the tail of the bolt in, I should say, it's on the here now, and to try to line it up just enough, then you can squeeze something like this under here and pull back on it. That'll give you just enough leverage to try to work with it on this end to force it through and get it lined up. The clutch pedal, on the other hand, is actually very simple. Since the spring doesn't have as much tension, it's a lot easier to just kind of hold this thing in place and slide it through one hand. Now, keep in mind that with these particular nuts here, you don't really need to torque them down. I mean, this thing isn't going anywhere, and I actually recommend that you don't torque them down completely in case you want to later on come back and swap out the mod within the brake pedal. It'd just be a lot easier to just kind of to get these bolts off to get these nuts off and just to not even have to really worry about it. I mean, they're mainly just here to help keep these pedals from moving left to right and just keep them in place here. So with that being said, I recommend not tightening them down. So with that being said, I'm going to actually put the base plate back on top of this thing and button everything down, and then we'll wrap up. All right, then the last and easiest thing to do is to reinstall our brake pedal faces here. And like I said before, it's very easy, just the 2 screws. And luckily, Logitech was kind enough to give us 3 different adjustments for each one of the pedal sets, so that way you can, you may not be able to move the entire assembly left or right, but you can at least shift the pedal plate left or right to kind of give yourself a little bit of adjustability for people who, like me, like to do a little bit more heel toe or not, if you want to do more formula style. So it's all up to you. And with that being said, let's just go ahead and get these mounted up. It's really quick and easy. Just get your screwdriver or your Allen head key, and let's get to putting these back together. And just like that, there you have it. We upgraded our pedal set. Everything's back together, looking normal. Now we can see that after I've done the mod, the brake pedal is much stiffer. I can barely even move it with my hand without breaking everything. And the same thing with my clutch pedal. Has a little bit more resistance, just the way I like it. And then of course my throttle is definitely feeling a little bit more lifelike. So it's up to you how you would like to actually plug and play with your spring mod set, and you can actually swap all of the springs around until you get the perfect feel that you want for your sim experience. So with all that being said, I really hope that this video was informative and very useful. If it was, please like and subscribe, as it really does help this channel grow. And with that, I'm actually about to put this back on my playseat challenge and connect it back to the G29 and get back to racing. And I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.